Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to Down to Chat. It's been a long time. Well, I say it's been a long time. It hasn't actually been that long. But I'm joined by the only man who calls tech support just for a chat. It's Adam Nather. Hello, Adam Nather.
Hi everyone, and yes, my ability to natter has been brought up a lot this week, in all honesty, and it has been a while. It's been almost a month, I'd reckon, but a lot's happened in that time. There's been a lot of racing that's been going on in
Th-
such a short period of time, really.
there has been a lot of racing, a lot of racing that concerns us, and a lot of racing that doesn't concern us as well. And the quality of the racing that concerns us and doesn't concern us happens to have been as variable as each other. I think so. There you go. We didn't have a chance to record anything after Rissington because everything was just way too busy and mental.
Mm.
Um, and then we've only just had a chance to really sit down after Rye House, which you weren't at, um, unfortunately.
No, I was in Le Mans.
Yeah, very nice. But yeah, it looked good from the photos that you had of it, or photos that I
Yeah,
saw at least. It looked like it was a good fun. That
no,
doesn't
it
make
was a
sense.
great
It looked like
event.
it was good fun.
It was one of the best 24s I think I've ever done. I was really impressed by the Le Mans 24. I weren't, yeah, I didn't have the best expectations going in, not due to the fact it's being Le Mans, just for a few other factors, but it ended up being a really, really good race, and I loved it. Um, Although everybody was taking points in Rye, I kept looking at the lifetime and thinking, oh, I was there having a drop round, what it might mean for my championship, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, don't worry, I didn't take any off you, so that's fine. The yeah, my well, no, actually, I need to be statistically accurate on this. My uh, Wilton wasn't too bad. Yeah, my Rissington and Rye House have not been great. But we'll get into that in a minute, and I can tell you just how not great they've been. Um, right, championship summary, because people said they liked this. They liked having a breakdown. Annoyingly, on this is something Alpha Live. Anyone from Alpha Live, if you're or not Alpha Live, Alpha Timing, if you're watching or listening, um, if you could make it so that there was a drop down box so that you could select up to which round you wanted to see the results for, that would be really
That
helpful
would be
because then
really
it means
good.
you could go back and have a look and see who was leading at a certain point. Because the problem is with a like if it was just normal racing where you didn't have drop rounds, I say normal racing, non-karting because karting tends to always have drop rounds. But if it was like your Formula One or your touring cars or whatever, obviously you just the points you get all the way through the season is the points you have. Whereas with karting, you drop scores, which then as soon as you bring the drop scores into it, makes it almost impossible to go back to a previous round and say, this person was leading at this point in the year, this person then overtook the. So yeah, alpha timing. If you could do that, just so you could select, I want to see the results up to this round, that would be awesome. And it would make making videos way easier. Anyway, um, championship rundown. Right, we can do championship rundown up to and including the end of Rye House, which Adam wasn't at. So we currently have Joe on top with Anwar and Kurt close behind. Then a little bit of a gap to Alex, Mikey, yourself, and then another bit of a gap down to me, Marcel, Miguel, and Adam Hadfield. That's your top 10 currently in the heavyweight sprint, and I think we should probably do the lightweight as well and see what's happening over there.
Oh
So
yeah, that's a very fair point.
we're not forgetting our our lightweight friends. Four close, so very close to the top. Fraser and Dante separated by 1 point respectively. Then you've got a bit of a drop to Andrew McWilliam, separated by 1 point to Wario Regan. So you got sort of two little battles there. They're not super far apart, Andrew and Dante, but it's a little bit more of a gap than 1 point. And then you've got Sam Lovelace, Jake Chapman, Harrison Kirkham, Max Chapman, Vishal Patel, and Tommy Lee as your top 10 currently in lightweights. So there you go. How do you want to do this, Adam? Because obviously you weren't at Rye House. So do you want to do Rissington first, and then I can talk about
Yeah,
my
well,
my Rye House and how much of a disaster certain parts of it were?
yeah, we can talk about Rissington first because we were both there, and Rye House. I can just be a spectator, or more, I could just react to everything that happened in your heats. And
Mm.
I have the joy of not having to recall anything that terrible that happened to me. So I think that'll be quite. I think that'll be quite fun for me.
Yeah, got them. Right, so where's my Rissington information? There's my Rissington information. Um, my first heat didn't go too badly. It was my back start, I think, and I ended up fifth. And I was like, you know what? For the way the season's gone so far, if you can get within the top five in your first race, that's from your back start. Sorry, that's all right. Like obviously you want to get further, but if you can get in the top five, you're doing all right.
Mm.
Um, and then it went downhill. I finished eighth in heat two because I got put on the grass, and I finished 11th in heat three because I got put on the grass. It was a cat. Um, and that led me to be I don't want to spoiler yours, but we both had pole position finals at Rissington. It's just mine wasn't as fun to write home about because I was in pole in the B final. So I've messed up on my target of not being in the B final this year. But there you go. I'll talk about in the B final more later as well. But
I
I won
mean,
that, and then finished 17th in the A because the first couple of laps were just like horrendous. Everything I did was just the wrong choice in hindsight. At the time, I don't think I did. It's just it didn't come off the way it possibly could have, and I ended up losing out on pretty much everything I did. So I ended up basically last through the first few laps, and then managed to get up to 17th, which around Rissington wasn't too bad, but it's definitely a dropped score.
I mean, just as a bit of solace, the last year's B final pole at Rissington was none other than Mr. Joe Holmes. So all the best drivers really pole a B final at Rissington. Going over to my results, heat one was my front start, which I don't usually like having your front start first. It's usually good to get the back out over the way. But started third. I had a really good car that I knew from the practice, and I got the lead after turn one, and that was kind of all she wrote. Heat two again started eighth, and like the Red Sea just kind of parted at the start. Everybody kind of decided they were all going to murder each other off, and I was just then in the lead and just stayed there. I don't know what happened in that heat. Everybody just decided they didn't want the lead, and they all just went out the way, and I was just there.
Yeah, but I think your comment of everyone murdering each other off with something else we'll talk about for Rissington. But yeah, do carry on.
Yeah, yeah, that is a pretty good prelude. Heat three, back start, started pretty much last. I managed to get up into fourth with a few laps to go, and then third just defended on white line, and I just couldn't get past. Like there was one chance I had, and I just overshot it. If not for that, I think I could have won the heat. But that was P4, and that did put me pole for the A final, which I was massively nervous for. And in hindsight, I absolutely did the same thing where I made every wrong decision and ended up going from first to seventh, which is, I think, barring the round one where I had a cart die on me, that's my worst final finish of the year so far. And all this year I've been saying, oh, if I can get a top three qualifying in the A final, I can really show what I can do. And the time I did it, it didn't go too well. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's really what you
tough
can
pill to
do,
swallow.
feel free to do that all year. That's absolutely fine with me.
Yeah,
Um,
going backwards, not my finest moment.
no, I mean, oh yeah, but poor
Really
you
good
that
luck.
seventh is your worst result this year. Oh God, I
No,
feel for you.
Butmore was 18th, but it was just the cart line. I don't count that. But
Okay.
so Butmore was
That no,
technically.
that one doesn't count. No, so I mean, like
Um,
I think I like Rissington as a circuit. I think like it's like a
I
proper
agree with that.
old school circuit where if you get it right, it feels great. If you get it wrong, you know about it. Um,
Yeah,
and I think because it's a circuit that requires a bit of patience, and it kind of requires you to take advantage of other people's mistakes to get past. I don't know if it showed the best in some people's decision making. I think in both the light and the heavies. I don't want to spend too much time
mm,
dwelling on driver standards, but I think that for both the heavies and the lightweights, I think the general consensus is that they were quite poor. Um,
yeah.
and from thinking about what I saw in the heavyweight stuff, I think it generally came down to moves coming off because of contact. And like there's certain things where I don't mind like a bit of rubbing. Like it's karting is more like touring cars than it is like formula racing. That even though it's single seat and everything, it's more like touring cars. So like a little bit of rubbing doesn't rub me up the wrong way. Excuse the pun. But I think a lot of moves were coming off because of the contact. It wasn't like a move that was fine and it just had a bit of rubbing. And then that contact, the amount of people like coming through the last fast right hander, I think like the third to last corner, the amount of people I was seeing being put on the grass on the outside when they were entitled to have a bit of space, I don't think was on. Um, Going through turn two as well, there were multiple occasions where uh, sort of people were being overtaken by somebody, and then the person that was behind the person overtaking was pushing them through the corner, so they had no front
Yeah.
end, and then that was basically forcing the person on the outside who was just trying to hold the outside to have the inside for the next left onto the grass, which is what happened to me on one of the heats. And then yeah, just people trying to make moves. I think when the person in front had already committed to the corner, and it's like again, I think we talked about it before. Have a bit of a lunge sort of thing. There's nothing wrong with a lunge in concept, but you can't do it once someone's already committed to a corner because it's just going to end in tears for at least one of you anyway. I don't know what your perspective was because you were much further forward than I was.
I mean, even in that A final, apart from the top 4 or 5, like once I started going back, it did seem like it was getting quite physical, I'd say. And even in the heats, I mean, I'd benefited from a lot of it, luckily, but I did see a lot of people loading into corners, especially the dog leg. That dog leg is honestly one of the hardest corners on the calendar because you have to slow down so much. There's a
Mm,
single point of an apex, which usually a hairpin, it's a radius. This is not a radius. This is a singular point. So it's a very tough corner to get right. And so having somebody just push you straight into that braking zone, like you're almost guaranteed to go off, and exactly what actually happened to me in that final at one point. And yeah, I just think people were being a bit too desperate, and it doesn't help that it's not the easiest track to overtake at. In all honesty, you can white line it for a long time, which was what again ended up happening in the final, what ended up happening in a few heats as well. So I think the fact that it's not the best overtaking track had something to do with it. I think the fact that this track seemed to be the carts didn't seem to agree with it as much. I think this that out of all the rounds that year, that was Bridgington was the one which had the worst parity.
mm,
Um, so I think that might have also had something to do with it. People were getting more desperate. They might have thought they didn't have the right carts. They thought they needed to just send a moon.
yeah.
Um,
I think
and
that maybe comes in as well with how for Rissington, all the carts had new exhausts and
mm,
freshly rebuilt engines, which on the face of it is like, oh, it sounds great, but they also haven't necessarily been bedded in after the rebuild.
mm,
Um, and I was speaking with Mikey Nichols, um, who he knows a thing or two about cars,
yeah,
and
very fast driver and a very good technician. Just as
um,
an introduction to anybody that doesn't know him.
yeah, and yeah, we were sort of talking about how at a circuit like Rissington, where it is like a massive power circuit because you're on the throttle for so long, having engines that aren't bedded in with brand new exhaust attached to the back of them with brand new wadding isn't necessarily the best thing. So um, we're not a tech podcast, but I'm sure if you want to find out more, you can do some googling as to why rather than us taking up time here, or you could go and speak to Mikey Nichols and distract him so he misses one or two heats and then has to drop a few more before you score. So that would be great.
Now he's a 1 point ahead of me in the standings right now, which in all honesty sounds about right. I feel like we've been thrust together at so many points this year. Like we just seem to have had very similar rounds
Mm.
to the fact that we're 1 point ahead, and we both missed try halves. Just to add again. So yeah, it'd be great if he misses another few heats. Makes life a bit easier for me.
But there, and then that would take us to not Rissington. We just done Rissington to Rye House where you weren't
Mm.
there. So I don't know
No, I
if you were
wasn't
keeping up with
there.
it.
I looked at the A final results. I was actually gonna be really keen and go through like every bits of live timing, but then we had quite a lot of drama over in Le Mans,
Mm,
where we were we were battling for the leading class with a couple of hours to go, and so I also hadn't slept that night. Tend to do this thing at 24-hour events where I get so invested and I probably chat too much. And I then realize and think, oh, I'm just not going to sleep through the event. And then regret it very painfully after when I'm
mm.
sleeping and just I'm recovering for the next few days. But I don't typically sleep when I get too invested in the event. So I didn't look too much at the live timings. I saw the results.
Yeah.
I saw the SV60 on the Saturday and I did message you for saying that, you've got a really good chance. And then I saw the results on the Sunday, and
Yeah.
I thought maybe I won't ask about it.
Yeah. Don't in future if you're not at an event and you see me doing like all right on the Saturday, just don't message. Just don't put that out into the world that there's then a possibility for me to just get bent over on the Sunday. But yeah, the Saturday did go well. I think I had like a SP40. Like I think I put it on third and then polled it for the SP60. And like the Saturday, I kind of had like good race, not so good race, good race, not so good race. Um, and then like a lot of that, the SP40. I think the second race, I just kind of pulled a cart that just didn't quite handle the way that I would want it to. And so trying to keep up with guys in front who are obviously quick when you're in something that just doesn't quite handle. It was fine, but it didn't quite suit how I wanted to take it around the circuit. Yeah, and then um, I just drove like an absolute fanny in the second SP60 race. I was I think I got myself into well, I'll have the vlog video at some point, but the kind of like the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation where Anwar was just defending really well as he's prone to do, being a good driver. And then yeah, I didn't hustle him enough. It made the people behind more inclined to try and send something on me rather than try and encourage me through, sort of thing. Which is fair enough. I would do the same thing. So just don't be so much of a fanny next time. But we're not here to talk about Saturday. We're here to talk about Sundays. What did I have? Seventh in the first race at Rye House. It was a back start, so it wasn't too bad. But like we said before, like fifth is where you should really be aiming to get to if you want to get a decent starting position on the A final from your back start, fifth or better. Won the second heat, which was good because that actually had some of the big names in it. So coming away with a win in the second heat was good. And then 12th in the final heat. That was just. I'll come back to a few things that were in the last heat. That put me, I think, third.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I think that put me 13th on the starting grid for the A final. And I worked out that if I'd have finished fifth in the first race, like I really should have done, and then the last race, I think if I'd finished I think I worked out if I'd finished sixth or better, which at one point I think I was running in that third heat, and then stuff happened. That would have put me, I think, like sixth on the A final grid.
That's crazy how like that's not many points difference. I
Um,
mean, Ryan House is also a very nefariously hard circuit to overtake at. Now, I wasn't there, but I imagine most heats were just people try like really just not being able to get past anybody. Because I think the first hairpin and
hmm,
the new chicane maybe and the last corner, those seem to be the only overtaking zones really on the track I'd
yeah.
think of.
Well, speaking of the new chicane, I thought it was great. Like it was a really good, fun corner. I remember like before going, and they'd sent the photos out showing what the new corner looked like. Stuff. I sort of looked and I was like, that looks really kind of clumsy. And then like you see
Hmm.
the aerial view of it, you're like, that kind of is this just going to be a wheel and mill final chicane sort of deal where it's not particularly fun to take and it's kind of there? It's a legitimately great little chicane. It's what the last corner at wheel and mill should be, because you get a little,
Really?
you can have a little bit of a jump going into it, but it does slow the cart down enough with the angle of it. I think like the way they've built it, it probably wouldn't meet certain standards to race at like a national competition level. But I mean, like, there's ways you can get around that. But like, just the way the curbs are contoured, I don't know whether or not there's a certain for new curbs being put in, if there's a certain profile they have to then be eligible
That would
for
make sense.
thing.
I doubt it's actually a thing, but it would make sense.
Yeah. And obviously, the way they built these curbs, they wouldn't, I suppose, necessarily meet that criteria. But I thought it was great, and it made the right-hander of pylon more of an overtaking point. Not that you couldn't overtake a pylon before, like the right-hander of it. I don't even know if that.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
think
got
I
you.
think I don't even know if that one is pylon. I think it's the left-hander technically that's pylon, but
I
you
think
know what I
people
mean.
call that pylon and then pylon 2. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, that right-hander became more of an overtaking point than it had been previously when you just had like the fast flick left into it. So I think that's a really good change they've made to the circuit. And in general, like, overtaking, it wasn't like, if people were white lining it, yeah, it was hard to get past. But if you had people that were trying to progress and you genuinely had a delta to them, like, it wasn't too bad. It's not too bad of a place to overtake. It's just when it gets, I mean, like any circuit, if people are determined to white line it going round, it gets hard. And then that's why I suppose you get people getting a little bit antsy and doing things that maybe don't help. But yeah, what else I said about Rye House?
It's great you love that chicane, by the way, because it won't be there next year. Well, I don't think it'll be in the layout if we do it next year. I think it's just
No,
it'll be an alternate layout for Rye House once the works on the actual pylon, not the corner,
I
have
would
been
be
done.
tempted to.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah, if I was Club 100, I would be tempted to run that corner. So I thought it was
Well,
better.
we need to do a wish list at some point, so
Yeah,
maybe that'll come up.
but yeah, so chicane was great. Better overtaking the corner after it. We also were running a different tire. Talking about different things that were different. We were running
Yes.
a different tire. So um, the tires that we normally run, the Dunlops, there's been a supply issue, and so they were using a Mitas tire, which is what I believe um, some other like endurance series use. I don't know which compound it was we had, but I kind of feel like it was the kind of like a middly compound. Um, Apparently in the wet, it wasn't a wet weekend. It was very hot at Rye House, but the apparently in the wet they're not great, especially when you compare them to what these Dunlops are like that we normally run, which are actually really good in the wet. But I suppose that would be the same for everybody if they're not that great,
Yeah.
then everyone's not got good
Don't take
tires in
much
the wet.
issue with that.
Um, but I thought they were really consistent. I liked them as a tire. Um, they were producing really consistent lap times throughout the entire weekend. I mean, I don't know. I don't, without sort of doing a little bit of quick research, I don't know what the lap times were at the end of the Saturday compared to the end of the Sunday compared to the Saturday, but I don't think they were a million miles away. And I sometimes think with the Dunlops, you can feel them fall off throughout the course of a
Yeah,
race.
100%.
In the qualifying sessions on the Saturday, everyone was setting fast laps towards the end of the sessions. It wasn't like people set the fast lap on lap 1 or 2 and then it was just dropping off. And in the races, like, you could be really, really consistent with times. If you're a consistent driver, you could get a really good grouping of times throughout the race. I thought they were a really good tire for conditions. It would be interesting to see if they looked at them again, if there is still supply issues with Dunlop. But one thing
I
I did
have
notice though
something to
is,
add to this, actually.
oh really?
Oh, go on,
Go on.
sorry.
I was going to say one
I'll
thing
go.
else I
You
did
go
notice
first, and then I'll hop on.
is that you could still overwork them. So there were carts that you could tell had been worked a lot harder, and going around that long right-hander to start the lap, it just didn't want to turn because the front left had been worked so much harder, um, and that made it quite difficult to keep up with people who were in karts that had been looked after a little bit more. Um, I think the kart parity at Rye was also better than it had been at Rissington. There were still a couple of rockets in there, but in general it was better. And then therefore you noticed the karts more that just didn't have the front end because they'd been just maybe
Mm.
hadn't been looked after as much. So you still had to look after the tire, but if you could, it was really consistent.
So I've actually been able to drive this tire
Mm.
because yesterday, yesterday morning I was at Bayford Meadows for the E60,
Mhm.
which is one of Club 100's, I guess, lesser known events. And I thought I've similar sentiments to you, so I think they made the cart parity a lot better. They seem to have a really consistent drop off, and they weren't um they didn't have as much of a cliff as the Dunlops did. However, and I don't know if you noticed this at Right House, but what I noticed at Bayford Meadows, having driven them on the Dunlops as well in the E60 last year, and actually also a few months ago, is that these tyres are ridiculously grippy,
Mm.
especially when they're new out the box. I mean, I don't know the last time you would have done Bayford just because you haven't done the E60 last year, so it might have been 2 3 years ago. But having done them on the Dunlops a while back, turn one, for example, is a really a bit of a tough corner. It requires a decent bit of braking to turn in, so you can get on the power and get a really good run on the exit. In these tyres, I was doing it flat when they were new, and then just the literal slight confidence break when they were getting really worn towards the end of the race. And I view Bayford as a real driver's circuit, as a really tough circuit to get your hands on because there's just so many corners and it does tend to be a lot of heavy braking zones and it's quite technical. I thought in these tyres it was a lot easier. And as much as I really like the fact there was a consistent drop off, as much as I like the fact that it helped the parity, I almost, maybe this is complete overconfidence, but I almost thought they were too easy to drive.
Yeah.
And it did seem to bunch the pack up massively because they were, again, I think they were really easy to drive and they made a lot of corners. The difficulty felt like it was taken out of. So that's great if you're like, I guess, at the back of the pack because it bunches you up. But in terms of like wanting to have a bit more difficulty, so you have field spread and so you have more of a challenge in driving the carts, and so kart parity doesn't become a bigger factor into what decides races. I don't think they're the best. And it could just be Bayford. It could just be I could just be chatting rubbish and we'll get to Bayford and there's a massive difference between the whole field, but I think the field spread's going to be really tight because I think these tyres are really easy to drive, and I think we're going to have them for both Bayford and Clay Pigeon. Bayford, I think you can get away with. Clay, a lot of those corners are barely even corners on the Dunlops. I've got a feeling that the last corner and perhaps the horseshoe will be almost completely flat in these Mitas. I think I've said that right. Tires.
I agree. Like the braking into the first left hand hairpin at Rye House, you could brake so late and still get it stopped. Um, so yeah, I agree. Like they're definitely a lot easier to manipulate than the Dunlops are. Um, so yeah, you're potentially seeing drivers who would not normally find themselves towards front of grid. Just maybe they're not as experienced. They're still developing their skill a little bit more. Um, it's enabling them to race higher at the grid, which is great. I mean, it's the higher the competition, the more interesting it makes the racing. Um, but maybe skill isn't rewarded as much as when you've got a tire that requires you to have to think about it a little bit more. I think um, like clay would be an interesting one because it's not known for always being dry. So if these tires
Oh, yeah,
aren't
I
good
forgot
in the
about
wet, if the tires aren't good in the wet, I mean, you're probably going to see massive field spread at somewhere like Clay because I mean that's not an
that. I'd
easy
love
circuit to
that.
drive in the
I
wet
would
anyway.
absolutely love that. To be fair.
Um, But yeah, Bayford will be an interesting one. If it's dry, you've got possibly the most technical circuit on the calendar, um, with a tyre that is easier to drive. So, would the technicality of the circuit lend itself to opening up the field a little bit more, even with an easier tyre? Don't know. Um, just like, where else do we go this year? Where else could you claim to be more technical than Bayford?
We go Bayford, Clay, then where are the last tracks? We've done Wilton. We go Shennington, which I don't think you can claim to be more technical.
No,
Of course, go Buckmore again. And is that it?
I think
I
so
think that's
this year.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Bayford. I think this year is one of the more technical circuits. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting there to see if it is dry, how it works. If it's wet, again, a very technical circuit on a tyre that is apparently, I've not driven them, but some people have in the wet, um, not known for being great. That would be interesting.
I'd
Um,
love to try it in the wet now. I'm my curiosity speaks about them being bad in the wet.
yeah,
And I've not driven the new Dunlops in the wet either. So people have told me they're really good in the wet, but I've not tried these really grippy Dunlops. I've only
yeah,
tried the other compounded Dunlops, which I thought were really grippy in the wet. So I'm curious to see.
yeah.
I want to see both, but
I was going to say the other thing to mention is, like I said, these I think were somewhere in the middle of compounds that Midas offer. So it could just be that maybe, if they're putting another order in for tyres from Midas whilst the Dunlop situation sorts itself out, um, possibly ordering a harder compound would be the way to go.
that might be a really good idea. I'd love to see that tested because if that has similar grip to the Dunlops, but without the tyre drop off, then I think you'd almost have maybe not unanimous, but I think the majority of the grid would then actually think, hang on, we don't the carts are closer. They handle pretty similar. There's still a decent skill gap. So going into the championship, you've got a mountain to climb, which in some ways is a good thing. And you still have a decent gap between the field. I think people would be quite happy for that to be a permanent change.
Mm.
They like if they had the same, I get yeah, skill gap as the Dunlops, these current Midas tires, and it helped with parity because the tires didn't drop off much. I'd be well up for keeping them. If they weren't so grippy at Bayford, I would have also said that yeah, maybe these should be a permanent feature.
Mm.
But but yeah, at Bayford it fell. For what I think is one of the corners that I'm one of the tracks that is hardest to get right on the calendar. Like I struggle getting it right, and even in that race, I was slightly inconsistent. Um, it should have been more difficult than it was.
Did you happen to see what lap times you were doing this year versus the year before on Dunlops?
I have no idea what the lap times were last year, but I know we would do it. I think the fastest lap of the race, which was done by a lightweight, weight parity, well, weight spread, like, sorry, difference in weight, I think is massive at Bayford. Not sure why, but like the lead heavyweight, which like is usually in like 10th compared to the lightweights in the E60, despite I think there being, but actually apart from Mikey, quote unquote quicker drivers in the heavyweight class. But I think the fast lap was a 54.5, and then the heavyweights was about a 55.6, 55.7.
Wow,
I don't know how that compares. And yeah, that spread, 14 kilos for a second is crazy.
that's
If you ever do
massive
a
compared to. I mean,
yeah of tracks,
what were we doing at Rye House? I mean, like Rye House is known for being a circuit that like doesn't help if you're overweight. I mean,
it's funny people say that, but last year in E60 had Rye House, and I managed to pole it overall in that round. And Matt Horgan, who was also a heavyweight in that championship, was behind me in P2. So that was a track where the heavies actually had no issue with keeping up with the lightweights in that particular layout or in that particular grid.
okay, so
Um, but at Bayford, were massively far behind, and I can't keep up with the lightweights no matter what I do. There
yeah,
were some laps I thought I really nailed as well. Couldn't keep up.
so yeah, the fastest lap on the Sunday at Rye House was in the A final, set by Miguel, did a 44.4. And I think there was another 44.4 during the day as well, from the heavies. and the fastest lap in the lightweights at Rye House was a 44.1. So 3/10 versus a second.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Just at the start, I'd made up a lot of places in that race, so I was up in like the top 5 or top 4, and then I'd just have lightweights coming past, making a real hash of the next corner. So I thought I'd stick with them, and they just drive off, and I just thought, okay, yeah, this is going to be a long one, racing with lightweights in the field. It 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 just seems to really hamper you if you have a bit of a weight disadvantage. Which, in fairness, for the super heavyweights at Bayford, it's going to be a struggle. I think I'd be hard pressed to see one in the A final. This is where every single super heavyweight decides to have the best day of their life at Bayford Meadows.
Yeah.
But my wacky prediction is that no super heavyweight makes an A final at Bayford.
I mean, I don't know if you can call that wacky.
It's
Yeah,
usually a
go,
super
go,
heavyweight in
yeah,
an A
go.
final.
No, not so much, not as in like a throwing shade on super heavyweights, but like having just literally had a conversation about how heavyweights were a second off the lap thing at a super technical circuit where weight really does matter. Yeah, you know what? I don't think I can see super heavyweights at an A final. It's like, I don't think we can call that a bold prediction. Yeah.
Okay, but it's unorthodox. You don't usually make a prediction about super heavyweights.
Right, heavyweights.
I think that's the angle I
Everyone,
was going from.
everyone at Bayford, you have to let the super heavyweights win the heats, just so we can prove Adam wrong.
Yeah, go for it. I wouldn't mind that, to be honest. I'll be the only person that doesn't follow that rule, and I'll win. I'll
Yeah.
take that. I'll take it.
That's
I'll take an A final pole again.
yeah, that's it, completely off topic. That's one of my one of the things I really want to do on iRacing at some point is get um a load of people together, but you don't win the race by winning the race. You win the race by like finishing in a set
Okay.
position. Yeah. So like
Yeah, I've
before the
seen
race,
videos like that.
you randomize which position is the winning position, and then it just becomes carnage. It's just yeah.
Imagine that in a Club 100 round.
Yeah.
You have to be in P10 to win the race. It would be the worst event, I think, in existence. Everybody would be absolutely. But people would be taking each other out, which would then actually make the position of P10 go to somebody who's just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
So then you'd end up all
who's
having to slow
lodged?
down.
Yeah, who's lodged in a barrier somewhere? Yeah, and then yeah, last thing from Rye, I've been through all the heats and all the finals, and I think Barnaby would be happy. People seem to be more behaved, which was good.
Was it?
Yeah, so much fewer penalties, and the penalties that I did see weren't necessarily like your advantage by contact penalties. They were more procedural, like you're knocking over cones and things like that. There were, however, a few too many speeding under yellow penalties for my liking, because I think it's you get a, a few too many occasions, and I think everyone's been guilty of it a couple of times, especially if you're near the front of a race and you're like, oh god, I really need to make sure I keep a gap, sort of thing. But where you kind of put up the token hand, but you don't really slow down. I've personally I've tried to make sure that I'm making it really obvious, especially if you're going past, like at Rissington, Barnaby was stood by the dog leg, and so it's trying to sort of, as you went past him, really make sure he could hear that you were off the throttle, sort of thing. For me anyway. But yeah, I think people just need to remember that the yellow flags they're not there as like a competition course in like in NASCAR. They're there to keep people safe. Someone not being knocked over by a go-kart, I think, is more important than keeping your gap a tenth of a second bigger.
Yeah, that's fair. That's quite surprising that the driving standards were so good at Rye House because it's such a tight and compact circuit.
Mm.
Like I said, it's a really tough track to overtake at you typically. So it's good to see that the driving standards. I found the word eventually. That the driving standards were seemingly good at Rissington, at least for the heavyweights. We do need. I think I have been offered by Blair McWilliam to have footage for some of the lightweight finals, which Blair, if you're watching this, which I think you will be because you've been asking about the episodes, please send them in because I think that might help us get more context for the lightweight finals as we can't right now we're struggling to comment on them because we don't see them. I did watch Rissington's lightweight A final, but I cannot remember it because it was a bump back, and I'd be hard pressed to say what actually happened. And I do want us to give an equal coverage of the championship, but at the moment it's massively difficult to do that. Other than the fact that I can say that Rob Newman, having looked at the results, managed to go from last in the A final to fourth, which again, a track that is so hard to overtake, to get from last to fourth in the A final is ridiculous. So yeah, especially it was a one-off event for him, so quite
Fair,
crazy to say the least.
fair play. Yeah. Speaking of driving, like, I
He
did
won a
say
B
that
final.
first thing.
He won a B final. There you go.
There you go.
He won the B final to get there.
But yeah, so the one thing I will say, I think we're going to do like a bit more of a talk about driving standards in like a future episode, have it like as its own thing. I've got like a bit of a thing about racecraft later for this one. We could talk about it then, but I think there was a few too many examples of people like pushing carts in front in a way that demonstrates that they're not necessarily fully understanding of how to push someone in front. Which I suppose let's actually use that as a way to sort of go into a little segment of what is racecraft. Um, Future
In
me,
the
make a
future.
jingle.
If you punt off drivers, you're being a dafty. It's time to find out about racecrafty.
Yeah, what is racecraft? I thought we could talk about, and so this is what we're going to start off with. I think, yeah, at Rye House, I was on the receiving end of it a few times, and it was frustrating. Where you've got people behind, and they know that a cart pushing another one is quicker. So like we're trying to break down the gap to the cart in front. If we start battling, we're just guaranteeing we will not catch them. So you'll get pushed along, or I will push you along. We'll catch up with the people in front, and then we'll start overtaking each other. And I think there's a few misconceptions as to how to do it properly, which tend to, not generalizing, so I'm sure some experienced racers have, maybe not intentionally, but they've been pushing someone maybe a bit too late into a corner. But there was a few examples, especially on when I was on the receiving end at Rye House, where I was being pushed all the way through the first corner, which basically means you can't turn, and then being pushed through braking zones. And so, yeah, I think it's developing that knowledge of, yes, absolutely push somebody down a straight, and certain fast corners, yes, you can push them through.
Yeah.
But as a rule, you don't push people through long corners, because the way a go-kart works, this means that that's just going to push them on. And either you'll push them on and overtake them, which would be illegal, or you're going to follow them and you'll both be slower anyway because you haven't taken the optimal line. And then, yeah, just sort of staying connected to somebody as you go through a braking zone isn't the one, because all you're going to do is nudge them wide, and then again slows you down, or you're going to overtake them, which would be an illegal overtake. So just make sure that you disconnect from people before you get into parts of the circuit like that. I don't know if you've ever been on the receiving end of that recently, but
Not recently, but it has happened. And sometimes especially when I was a bit newer and a bit rawer to the sprints, that I've done it myself, where not intentionally, but just braking a bit later and then just hitting somebody into a braking zone. Wouldn't then make the move, but like just cost us time. So it can be difficult to do. But to be honest, I'd just take that if you're in a little pack and it's the beginning of a race and you can see many drivers ahead, as long as the drivers are working with you, I would take that as a win at this point, because there's a lot of drivers that they don't, I don't know if they don't see the bigger picture. Maybe they just have a different philosophy of they're not there to get the best result possible. They just like racing, which is very fair. But you do have it with some drivers on the grid that you'll get past and they'll instantly send another move down on you. It could be lap 2 of the race, and there could be like 10 other drivers that you both could feasibly catch. but they will not be happy unless they're not getting overtaken, so they'll just fight you for the rest of the race. So that is also an example of, I mean, I would argue bad racecraft and just not using your head in a race. But I do guess that depends on what you want out of the race. If you're doing the sprints because you just want to have fun in battles, then maybe that is the best thing for you to do. But if you just want the best result possible, I don't think it's what, if somebody overtakes you, unless if it's the last couple laps, there's not really much of a point in defending. It's better to, as we've talked about, push each other along and try and catch up to carts ahead. Even if there's a decent gap, having two carts work together can be massive. Like, you could easily give yourself an extra 2 or 3 attempts at some tracks, if not even more. At tracks like Clay, where you've got long straights, that toe is massive. You pushing each other along is going to give you so much lap time.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year in the A final, it was me and Alex in front of me, and I think we maybe had like a two and a bit second gap to the cart that was in front of us in the final, and just from me sort of going, fine, yeah, I'll push you along. I think we broke that like 2 and a bit seconds down, like in maybe 2.5 laps. Like, it was massive because they were on their own, and like we pushed along, and I can't remember how that race finished. I think maybe Alex managed to get him, or we just needed maybe one more lap in the race or something for us to make a move. But yeah, the bottom line was, like, we either would have fought each other and locked ourselves into that position, or worse, because it would have slowed you down, or you go, right, we've got 3 laps until the end of the race or whatever it is. Let's see if we can catch the guy, and if we don't, then last lap we can have a fight. But let's see if we can. So
100%. I was just going to say, speaking of Alex, I'll be sad if I don't mention the fact that he did clean sweep the heats at Rye House, which, again, I think Rye House is a really tough circuit to overtake at. So to have won every heat, I didn't say a good well done to him, but yeah, just to reiterate, he's done really well.
I mean, he had a mega weekend, like both like Saturday and Sunday, absolutely mega.
He is known for being a king at Rye House. It seems to be like everybody, because I think he has won an A final there, which is something that we've yet to do. Yeah, so Rye House seems to be the circuit that he just gels with a lot. Maybe if we ever get him as a guest on the podcast, which I know we have to at some point, I'd love to ask what is it about Rye House that he seems to gel with, because he always seems to be different gravy there. And yeah, clearly that was the case at that weekend. He didn't win, but clean sweeping heats is really tough to do, and he was still P3, and I think he was in the fight for the win.
I was going to say, like, before the start of the Sunday, like, speaking to like Anwar and Joe and Kurt and Alex himself and a few of the other guys around the paddock, no one thought anyone was going to get 3 wins.
No, I wouldn't have put money on it.
No. So yeah, so when you've got like drivers of like the quality of what the front runners are like, all saying, yeah, like maybe 2, but getting 3 just is, I don't see that happening today. And then to go out and get 3 wins, like, that's like fair play. So
I want to do a comparison. I want to see if the lightweight sprints, what pole was. Did anybody have 3 heat wins at Rye? And I don't think they did. And I think the closest was Fraser, who had 2 wins, which sounds great, and then he had a 7th. Just to show you how difficult it is to actually clean sweep at Rye House. Nobody really came that close in the line.
Clearly, good racecraft being shown by Alex at Rye House. So for me, I think I've sort of pared it down to like my 5 things that I think show if someone has got good racecraft. And this isn't saying that this is exclusively the only 5 things you need to have good racecraft, but this is like the 5 things that came to me first when I was thinking about it. So the first thing is positioning, and then putting yourself on the circuit in the right place, I think is the first thing. And it sounds really simple and a bit stupid, but the amount of people that you will see that just don't position themselves correctly on the circuit, either when they're in free air or when they're surrounded by other drivers, is more common than you'd think. So Positioning, I think, is a sign of good racecraft. And these are in no particular order either. They're just the order in which they came into my rather simple brain. So the next one was seeing things before they happen, like having that kind of. I suppose this is,
Anticipation.
yeah, I suppose this is racecraft, but it's also experience. Like I wouldn't expect someone that's been racing for a year to have the same racecraft as someone that's been racing for 10 or more. But yeah, like the more experience you get, you can start seeing things before they happen, and you'll see the front running guys, and I kind of feel like I'm able to do this as well. Again, not saying that I'm one of the very front running guys, but you'll have a collection of drivers in front of you, and you're like, this is about to end in tears, and they might not even be doing anything particularly heinous at that point. It's just the body language of their carts, and you're like, this is not going to end well for anybody. And then you can put yourself in the position to take advantage of it when it does. I think like the best example, not saying that it's comparable, but it's like your through goes Hamilton
Saw
moment.
the rear wing over. This is going to be very close into Stoke corner.
Yeah, Perez is catching Charles Leclerc. He takes him towards the inside. Perez on the inside. Charles Leclerc gives him just enough space. Can Perez squeeze past? They're going wheel to wheel towards Vale now. Who's going to be last on the brakes? Leclerc has that inside line. Through goes Hamilton. Unbelievable stuff coming out of the final corner. Perez and Leclerc going for it. Hamilton says thank you very much. Another thing opens up for him.
Where you got the two drivers in front, and it's like that the only way that ends is with them both being slow, and I just need to put myself in the right place at the right time to take advantage of it. Which again, maybe sounds easier than it actually is, because you'll see a lot of people that something bad will happen in front and they're not able to put themselves in the right place, which links with your positioning to take advantage of it. I think me at Rye House, I kind of like, I wasn't able to use my ability in that area to the best of it. There was a few examples where I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen, so I'm going to do this. And then it went how I thought it would, but because of the nature of Rye House, even knowing what was going to come, because of where I was relative to where stuff happened, I just wasn't able to take advantage of it, which was frustrating. Third thing, knowing when to attack and when to defend. I think you alluded to it earlier in terms of some people might just want to have a good old scrap. But knowing when to attack or defend, I think is important. Being aware of what's happening around you, not just in front of you. I suppose that links to your positioning, and you're seeing things happening before they happen. And then lastly, like being able to plan a move, but also having the ability to take advantage of sudden opportunity. Because I think for everyone, they'd be like, right, I've been following this guy for a couple of laps. I know where I'm going to overtake them. And then suddenly they just get something wrong. But because you focus so hard on overtaking them where you want to overtake them, you then don't necessarily make the move when it is literally put on a plate in front of you. And that's something that, as you get more experience and as you develop your racecraft, you're able to do that more readily.
That's a really good list. I can already look at those 5, as I'm also not definitely far from being anywhere near a perfect driver. I think, like, looking at those, the positioning and sometimes just a bit of the anticipation is things that I think I currently lack in terms of, like, not to a huge extent, but it's definitely the things that I could improve on to have better racecraft, we shall say. So no matter where you are on the grid, there's usually some aspect of racecraft you could probably improve on. And those with the best racecraft, like to gauge on who's got really good racecraft, it's usually the people that, even if they're not the quickest drivers and they're not always setting purple lap times, they're always at the front of the grid. Yeah, they could have a terrible car, or they could just be a few tenths off, and yet somehow they'll pull off either a win or somewhere in the top 3. And you then sat there scratching your head like, how's he done that? Because pace-wise, he shouldn't be there at all. So that's usually a good telltale indicator of something, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it works both ways as well. Like you'll have people that are rapid, but their finishing position doesn't match their raw pace because their racecraft.
I think you get a lot more of those.
Yeah.
I think that's more common.
Yeah, whereas their racecraft doesn't lend itself to maximising what pace they do have, and I think you tend to see that most. I think that's where it comes down to the difference between your C1 drivers and your C2 drivers, and then your C3 drivers in the current class system, is that you would expect your C1 drivers you'd expect them to be quick, but you'd expect them to be consistently able to use whatever pace they do have, because everyone's going to pull a car at some point that isn't the quickest in the grid, but somehow they're still able to put it in a place where it maybe doesn't deserve to be. We've talked about this before. Like, one of my goals for the year is, if I've got a go-kart that is a 4th place go-kart, that's my aim for that race, is to finish in 4th. And I think it's sometimes like, yeah, you want to win. I mean, if I had the opportunity to win a race with a go-kart that was the 5th best go-kart on the grid for that race, I'm not going to go, well, I know I'm not going to win, actually, because that's not where this go-kart should finish. Like, of course, like you'd go for it, but like, with all things being equal, if that go-kart was the 5th quickest, just make sure you finish in 5th. Which I think is what, like, your Joes and your Kurts and your Anwars and your if you go into lightweights, your Frasers and your Dantes and like all your very, very front running guys, it's what they're so good at, is just maximizing every bit of pace that a kart has, and it comes down to their racecraft and their ability. I was speaking to Joe at Rye, and this was after, I think this was just after I'd had an absolute tongue lashing by Steve, who'd been watching the second SP60 race. And yeah, thank God I'm not a Holmes boy, because growing up with that would have been absolutely brutal. But yeah, so I was speaking to Joe, and I was sort of saying how, like, you'll watch him in a race, and he'll have a back start, and after the first lap, maybe he doesn't go anywhere, so he's still 12th, 13th, or something in the race. And then a lap later, he's 10th. You're like, oh yeah, he's moved forward a few positions. And then like a lap later, he's 9th. And then a lap later, he's still 9th. And you're like, oh, he doesn't seem to be moving forward. You'll look away and you'll have a chat with someone, and then you look back and suddenly he's in 2nd. It's like, how the hell has that just happened? But it's just that relentless progress for us, which you can only have. And I would say, I use Joe as an example because I was talking to him about it, but there's plenty of guys that demonstrate this. But it's that kind of like just relentless and methodical moving forward in a way that just loses the minimum amount of time possible. And I think that, if that's the knowing when to attack or when to defend, I could probably add into that knowing how to attack and how to defend in a way that doesn't lose you more time than is necessary. Because I mean, I know I've done it. I'm sure you could probably say that you've done it as well. You'll go for a move, and it'll be a great move. It's like, it looked awesome, like it was properly solid, and then you look up and you realise you've just lost a second to the person in front of the one you just overtook, and you're like,
I've definitely
yeah,
done that too
you're
many
like, yeah,
times.
great. I've made a position, but I've now guaranteed I'm not going to get another one. Whereas,
Yeah, all too
your
common.
your faster guys and the ones that are consistently getting on your front couple of rows of an A final, they just don't seem to lose time when they're overtaken. Like, they'll overtake a guy and they still are about the same distance than the next car in front, which is something I need to get better at.
The racecraft is such a weird thing because it's not something you can really train either. It is really just an experience thing, and almost, I guess, the only way to train it is being a lot more self-aware of what you're doing on track, instead of just kind of just going for moves without really thinking or planning in advance. Having that almost conversation with yourself mid race of what's the best way to attack this, and then even self-reflection on heats after, saying that, was that really the best move to go for? Should I have fought then, or should I have pushed them along for longer? Like, having that self-reflection is the only way I think you ever really improve in something like this.
I think it'd be interesting to have this same conversation with a few other people as well. So yeah, we'll get a few guests on at some point, and we'll have what is racecraft to you? How do you do racing good?
Sounds like a group therapy session.
It does a bit of it. Yeah, welcome to Racers Anonymous. Yeah. Then yeah. Right. So the last thing I want to talk about today, Adam, is why racing punishments have to be harsh. Why should they be harsh, and why do they have to be harsh?
You're going to bring this into a conversation about like the justice reform system at this rate.
Yeah.
This could open up a whole can of worms.
Yeah, yes, how racing is very similar to current UK politics. No, we're not doing that. So yeah, the full disclosure as well. I 100% got this idea to talk about from, again, like I've talked about him before, the Oakman on Racing. This YouTuber, like it's a great karting channel. If you haven't watched any of his stuff, go and watch it. He's really good, and he gives the perspective from like the officiating side of karting, which I don't think you get a lot. But yeah, he was sort of talking about, as an official, what he thinks about when awarding penalties to certain things that happen. From what he was saying, like the thing that came across to me is that as a racing series, the way that you structure your punishments, whether that's Motorsport UK, whether it's a private series that use Motorsport UK as a jumping off point, whether it's something that's real or sim racing, whoever you are, the way that you set your punishments is a direct reflection of what your expectations are for your drivers. So if you have incredibly strict punishments, you are insinuating that you have very high expectation for the standard of driving with your drivers. If you have relatively low punishment, you're setting the expectation of your drivers to be much lower. And I think you can see that in terms of, regardless of what the racing series is, the level of severity of a penalty and how consistently it's applied directly informs the quality and expectations for the drivers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can even think of examples of that. So going to quite possibly the most grassroots of motorsport in team sport, you can make, and I guess this is part and parcel of being indoor karting, but you can make quite a lot of moves at contacts, and they give you penalty points, which don't have any, unless you get 3 penalty points, you don't get any penalty. So you almost have you can murder 2 people, get 2 penalty points, and then only on the third one will you actually receive some form of penalty. So at the very low end, you have that. And so the expectation there is that a lot of moves are going to have some contact, and they're not just going to be a little rubbing as racing. They're going to be advantaged by contact, and you're getting forced off. Whereas in Club 100, in fairness, you've got position penalties. If you make an advantage by contact penalty, you could lap the entire field 10 times over. You're not winning that race. And so it completely takes away your ability to win a race. So the punishments tend to be quite harsh if they're seen. I see that philosophy, and I think that's true. But I think the main reason for karting punishments. So I'm very much that most times when you punish somebody, the main, for the most part, the main intention should be like rehabilitation, making sure that they learn from it so that they become a better person and theoretically society becomes a better place. But also, I think in karting, you don't really have that rehabilitation, and it's mainly a deterrent. You as much as everybody might have the best will and wanting to have really good races with each other outside of a go-kart, once you're inside, you're going quickly, you're not going to make the best decisions. You're not in an environment where you're able to think things through and have a long think before you make a move or you make a decision. It's usually a split-second moment. And so having the idea in your head that if this goes wrong, you will face a very harsh punishment in what could be a 4 position or a 6 position penalty, that is a huge deterrent and makes you second guess almost whether you think a move's going to be a good idea. And in hindsight, probably stops a lot of bad moves from occurring because you're worried about the penalty that you could get if things go wrong. And so I think, yeah, deterring the idea from many drivers is probably the main aim for penalties, or that's how it is in my head. Obviously, there's the punishment aspect as well. If you've been taken out, you at least want the the driver who's made or who's taken you out to face punishment. But like for making racing better, them getting a punishment for one incident doesn't actually make the racing as a whole in the series better. But having a deterrent there does, because people will then be more mindful of moves, and that's why we have the penalty spreadsheet on the Facebook group for Club 100. After every single round, you can view every driver and see what penalties they've got, and it is almost like a name and shame. Where if you're on the top of that list, people aren't going to have the best reputation with you out on track, and people will then make insinuations about your driving standards, and you don't want to be on top of that list. So that works as a deterrent. So you then are a bit more thoughtful, maybe a bit more conservative about your moves. You get less penalties, and you're not the talking point of the paddock for being a bit of a silly goose. So yeah, I think deterrents are the main main reason for carting penalties, or that's how I view it.
I tell you what, I would be all for a new thing if you are in the top 5 of like penalties. I think you have to have a sticker of a goose somewhere on the
On the
front and back of your car. Or you
I
have to
actually
wear
think
a
that's
silly
good
goose
idea.
bib. Yeah, not
Or just
bandit,
any sort
just
of
silly goose.
markation.
Yeah.
You have to wear something on your car or on your person that indicates that you're in the top 5 of penalties. I genuinely think if that was a thing, you would stop so many moves from happening, because nobody would want to wear that. Everybody who would have to wear that would feel massively embarrassed. So I think, yeah, maybe it should be like a novice plate if you have to, or like a learner's plate on the back of your suit if you've committed in the top 5 of most penalties. I honestly would be massively pro that the championship. That would take my vote. I'd sign up.
Bring back change through shame. I think you're right in terms of like the what we have in terms of advantage by contact, having like 4 or 6 place penalty is a good deterrent. I still think it happens too often. Something else, it's like you talk about penalty points and like being ranked. I think the like the championship deduction being a legitimate option for organisers is good to have. In terms of like if you're someone that is just repeatedly offending, you are there to try and do well at the same time. You're not going to, because you're going to have points taken away from you because you're not upholding the standards of what the series want you to be doing. I still think it's odd that as a series, and I'm pretty like, if you looked at any other karting series, especially if you went into nationals or club racing, I still find it odd that exclusions can be dropped in Club 100. I don't think that should be the case. I think if you've been excluded from a race, that should be a counted score.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Next episode, we really need to do the wish list. We need to talk about what changes we'd like to see for next year, because I think that'll be one of them. I think it's going to be a great discussion. But I completely agree with that. I think one thing that is also it's really wishful thinking, and it would massively up the budget of series. But knowing that other championships have footage to go back on for penalties, and I know in the heats you'd be there all day, so probably not for the best, but at least for the finals, having either circuit static cameras or just some sort of footage to go back on for certain penalties, at least in like the finals, I think would be good. It seems to work for other series. Seems like it would be a lot of hassle to implement, so which is probably why it's not done. But it does seem to have success with less penalties, and also there will be unfair penalties that happen for so many reasons, like not even blaming any of the spotters who might end up calling them, but it will help those just become less of a talking point or an issue.
Yeah, I can't see that ever happening.
No, not can I.
It opens up such a can of worms, and it opens up such a an increase in cost and time, like you said, like no one wants to finish a race and be like, sweet, now we're going to rate for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whilst the footage gets reviews to make sure that everything is kosher. Like, I think it's a necessary thing to have at your national, European, world level, where you can have that infrastructure and you do have the money and the staff to be able to run an entire like race control suite off of cameras. I think that whilst if you could have that at Club 100 level and have it run the same way, yeah, great, but it wouldn't. And it would it would take the cost to the point where it no longer makes the series as attractive because of cost. So
Yeah, I completely agree. As much as it's wishful thinking. It would be nice, but I can get that. One thing speaking of footage, have you seen the? I feel like it's almost a series on the Facebook group now of the Who's at Fault.
Yeah,
in the lightweights specifically, which I find it's really funny. But
yeah,
it's probably not the best way to go through it, but I do find them quite interesting. We should definitely talk about all of those and go through our views on those at some point.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
No, that's
fair. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's right. I need to plan what I'm going to say here. So
I've really thrown you in the deep end now.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I think it is a potential source of conflict, which will inevitably only end up showing itself on circuit. It would be unlikely for it to be a civilized conversation behind closed doors and then being dealt with. It would come out on circuit, and like you said, like it's predominantly been stuff from lightweights that's been put up. This isn't me making a sweeping generalization for all lightweight drivers, but there's a lot more younger drivers in lightweights than there are in heavyweights, just because younger drivers tend to be lighter, unless you're me, in which case you were a fat bastard when you were younger. But
like, I mean, I'm in my early 20s and I'm a heavyweight. I'm also fitting that mold very much. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you don't class as young though when it comes to karting. But yeah, like you tend to have a lot of younger drivers, and I feel like I can speak with some level of authority, being that I work in schooling. Young people don't tend to make well thought out decisions. So yeah, I could see reactions to stuff where if someone feels like they're being particularly got at, coming out on circuit rather than being dealt with in a way that keeps everybody maybe not happy, but keeps everyone civil. I also think that if I'm in the front office of Club 100 and I know that people are using footage from races as a way to potentially get at other drivers or show the series in a negative light, I just stop cameras and then no one gets to use them. Which means that
that'll be a nuclear option.
Which means for everyone that does want to put together a nice video that helps to sort of promote the series, or like me, I started making my videos just because I was like, well, if I'm going to do some racing again, I want to film it to see if I can get better. Well, if I'm going to film it to see if I can get better, I might as well turn it into a bit of a video. If I'm going to do that, I might as well comment over it. If I'm going to do that, I might as well make some graphics to go with it.
And then before I know, into your series.
And it becomes something that I really enjoy doing. It's a hobby
I
that
brought
I
out this podcast.
yeah, and it's a hobby that I didn't foresee me having, but I've really started enjoying making videos about racing, which are dependent on having some quite interesting onboard footage. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the not too distant future, Club 100 take the decision to say, okay, well, we just won't let cameras be run on karts either at all or during racing anymore, because it's not being used in a way that either promotes the series positively, or it's not being used in a way, it's being used in a way that is damaging for the reputation of people within the series or for the series itself. So yeah, I'm all for people. I mean, of course, I'm all for people posting their race footage. I do it and I enjoy doing it. But if in the not too distant future I'm unable to do that, and it would be annoying because like I've wanted to try and make a product that I enjoy making, and B is engaging and enjoyable to watch. And to make it enjoyable and engaging to watch, I've sort of invested in some better equipment to then make it so. It would be a shame if for some cheap laughs, no one's able to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's completely fair. And as much as I do find it entertaining, but it does feel like point scoring to me. That is all it feels like. It's an exercise in wanting people to back you, and then wanting to showcase somebody else in a bad light every time, rather than actually getting a genuine response out of it or sparking like an insightful discussion. The intentions clearly aren't clean, as we should say, to actually get a nice discussion. It does feel more of a either comedic or just point scoring exercise. So it's objectively it's not a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it all comes with context as well. Like if, for example, I had done something where I've been a bit of a silly Billy, and it was captured on camera. If someone said, "Oh, like, would you be happy with me posting this with a bit of?" I'll give you an example, right? So, Ella Park, 2 years ago now, maybe, as we were making our way on circuit, we were in the row of karts that was off the dummy grid, so you have to go through a reasonably tight entrance, right, to get
I
onto
think I
the
know
grid
where
of
this
it,
is
and
going.
then go. And I was following behind a couple of karts, and a couple of karts in front of me was Steve Lindley. And going,
I didn't know where this was going.
Yeah.
I
and
remember this.
going through that gate, Steve was a bit of a silly Billy, and he absolutely clocked one of the uprights of the fence.
Yeah, the gate post.
And it was one of those things where it was it was a bit funny in the moment, sort of thing. It's like, oh, what a, like, to use your, like, what a silly goose. And I thought, like, that would be it would be a sort of thing where, as long as it's done lighthearted, people can find that a bit funny. But before I put it on the group, I messaged Steve and I said, Steve, I've got this footage. I sent him the footage so he could see it. Would you be happy with me posting that as just a little bit of a laugh? And he came back saying, yeah, go for it. If you're going to post something that has somebody else doing something silly, making a decision that maybe they aren't the proudest of, making a decision that they at the time thought was the right one, but with the hindsight was like, no, I was in the wrong or whatever, they have to be in on it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So yeah, like by all means, like, have like here's a collection of silly moments from this weekend, but every single person who was part of that video has been consulted first to be, are you happy to be part? I've had this footage given to me, or I captured this footage. Are you happy for it to go in? And if they say
Yeah, I
no,
think
you
that's
respect that and you
pretty
don't put it
good.
in.
Agreed. I think that is the best way to go about it, really. Whether that'll stop it from happening moving forward, I'm less sure. But yeah, it's not the best thing that's come out of it. It can be entertaining. Like I said, I do find them funny, but it's not a good look on the championship overall, as we've kind of discussed, I guess.
That would be my 2 cents. Is the bottom line being, I think it would be a massive shame if, for momentary laughs or just trying to whip up a bit of a controversy, the enjoyment of recording footage and maybe not even posting it, just being able to record your race footage so you can learn from it, is then taken away from people.
Agreed.
Because I would, if I was Club 100 and I thought people were using footage from races in a way that harms my brand, I wouldn't let it happen. Why would I?
Yeah, you don't really stand to gain anything from it.
I feel like I've rambled on then for a fair while. That's my two
Yeah,
cents.
I opened up something that I was not expecting. I opened up Pandora's box there.
But there you go. That's all I had planned for today. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, I'm very.
That was such a downer.
I was going to go.
No,
very spontaneous.
I just want to go and cry in a corner now. Yeah.
No, I'm not a planner. I just do things in the moment.
Well, there you go. You may be planning your moves and not just taking sudden ones. That will help improve your racecraft, Adam. And there you go. Thank you, listeners and watchers, maybe of all walks of life, karting wise. If you've enjoyed it, please do let us know. Put a comment to say I enjoyed. If you didn't enjoy it, put a comment down at the bottom to say that you did enjoy it, and just lie to us, because that helps our egos and stops us from crying. No, but if you do, anything that you want us to maybe talk about more, talk about less, this is still a work in progress, so let us know.
Yeah, any feedback is huge.
Yeah, it should be great. And I look forward to seeing everyone at Bayford Meadows for a fun weekend of non-silly goosery. So
it's live streamed as well. So we can use footage next episode.
Yes.
I will get. I'm my one resolve is I'm getting my GoPro on for Bayford so we can potentially use footage for the next podcast. That is something I really want to do.
Yeah,
so,
get it on.
When I don't do it, it's now on camera that I'm been a silly goose myself.
There you go.
Forgotten. So
yeah, get that camera on whilst you still can. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, have a good one, everyone. Bye.
I feel like I went a bit hard on the camera conversation.
You went teacher mode, I think.
I did a little bit, yeah.